Welcome to the Summit of Things and welcome to the Leveraging Data for Digital Transformation Success panel discussion with female Industry 4.0 leaders. I'm Tiffany Nielsen with IoT Marketing, and with me I have Angela Thurman of Thurman Co. How are you doing today, Angela?
I'm fine, Tiffany. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. And I also have Sarah Hanks of Virtual Leverage. How are you doing today, Sarah?
I'm doing great, Tiffany, and yourself?
Wonderful. And we also have Carol Mitchell Lynn of Fuse Data. How are you doing today, Carol?
I'm having a great day today. How are you?
Fantastic. All right. And to get things started, we'll just jump into the questions here. So, first up is Angela. Angela, what role does data play in helping organizations achieve digital transformation goals?
It's a very important one. It's actually foundational to digital transformation. And we have an interesting comparison. So we have digitization and then digitalization and then digital transformation. So if we want to compare these, we think about um, digitization. This it lays the groundwork. This is turning analog information into the digital data that enables the subsequent steps of the digital development. And then digitalization makes this digitized data and it employs digital technologies to optimize the business processes, and it enhances our user experiences and it creates additional value. And then finally comes the digital transformation. So this is the overarching strategy that encompasses both digitization digitization and digitalization. So that aims for the complete organization overhaul that takes place during a digital transformation. So each step represents a step forward in integrating technology into the organizational structures and operations that create value, foster innovation, and ensures adaptability in this ever evolving digital landscape that we have today in manufacturing.
Thank you so much, Angela. And looking at what all of this different digitalization, digital transformation, it's easy to get them confused. So thank you for unpacking that for us.
Certainly.
And next, Sarah, when it comes to creating a data pipeline, why is it essential for companies to focus on people and processes?
Well, I'd like to start with people first. And when I think about people and data, the first thing that comes to mind is trust. People need data that they can trust, and that means that the data has to be of high quality. But then on the flip side, we want to keep the trust of people. And so, therefore, any personal data really needs to be protected in the appropriate ways so that we make sure to keep trust with the people as well. And when I think about process, it's really how does work get done? It's a sequence of steps that go from point A to point B. And each step along the way really ought to be understood. Um, and it needs to be defined who does each of those steps along the way. Because what you'll see is for the work that needs to happen within each of those steps, there's data that's relevant. There's data that's getting created and there's data that's needed. And understanding what that looks like from the beginning of the process to the end of the process is something that's really important when it comes to creating a data pipeline because it can help set the stage and help set the strategy of how do we get data to people when they need it.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And Carol, what is a modern data platform and why should organizations use one?
Thank you, Tiffany. Yes. Well, when you're looking only at tech, there are many data platforms. But if you're considering what we would call maybe a modern data platform, Essentially, what it does is bridges the gap between IT and the people who are using the data in their daily work life. Organizations that have determined that they need one should be looking at it with the intention to improve the lives of the people who are making an impact. And for example, having a modern data platform would prevent them really from falling behind. So instead of spending days or hours creating reports, they would have a platform that would make it easier for them. In the end, they would be working at a sustainable pace and gaining insights from the work they do every day. And in the end, they would be happier workers.
Thank you so much, Carol. And Angela, how can organizations ensure data privacy and security while undergoing digital transformation?
Well, to ensure data privacy and security, especially in the age of this digital transformation we're seeing, I would recommend that the company consider privacy by design, that they actually take the time to design that in to their efforts, and that they also consider and conduct regular risk assessments. So they need to periodically audit their digital assessments, or digital systems rather, to identify any vulnerabilities. And then one of the most basic things that an organization can do is to encrypt their data. They also want to control who has access to any of the data. And so restrict that data, because not every employee needs to have access to all of the data. It needs to be role-based to ensure that only those with an actual need to know have access to any sensitive information. And then, of course, the next level of control would be to implement multi-factor authentication. And this adds another layer of security that goes beyond just simple passwords. Um, Employee training is a very simple tool that they can use, and just to raise the employee awareness of the sensitivity of the information and how to protect and secure that data. And then just the maintenance of the data, and making sure that they do have an incident response plan in the event that there is a data breach. So those would be the things that I would recommend.
Thank you, Angela. And Sarah, what is the continuous improvement toolkit and how do you align it with digital strategies to deliver step function change in processes?
Oh, absolutely. Continuous improvement, simply put, is just making things better, making processes more efficient, making sure less defects happen, making things easier. As Carol had said, people are happier when they're able to do their jobs efficiently. And so I really think of continuous improvement as all of those things. And the tools that are in that toolkit, traditionally started with things like lean manufacturing or Six Sigma, or even change accelerated process tools in the toolkit. And I think what's great about today and the technology and the availability of data and the new changes and things that are happening is we get to add to that toolkit. And so when you're adding things like software systems that can drive workflows, or you're adding AI into your toolkit to help create emails faster or to analyze data, um, you can do things that you didn't normally have before available. And what I've seen is that when you introduce a software system through and a workflow through software, you can actually shrink the process because you can give people real-time notifications. You can answer questions by going into the system and understanding where things are at. You can pulse the status of things quickly, so you can project manage really effectively. And I think that is doing something that your normal lean approaches may not have afforded you. And same thing with having data and machine learning. Traditional approaches to analyzing a problem would include, spending a lot of time getting parts and then analyzing those parts. But with big data, can you actually narrow down the potential root causes of an issue by just using simple machine learning on that data?
Thank you, Sarah. And Carol, what are the key considerations organizations should know when it comes to choosing a data platform?
Some of the key things to look at when using a data platform or considering a data platform would be, for example, the ease of use. Is it something that your technical and non-technical users can use? Next would be the cost of ownership. Have you looked into the licensing, administration, enhancements, or data usage? All of those things needed to ensure reliable and usable data. Have you also looked at the platform's capabilities and scalability? So if there is increased data volume or increased access points over time, can the platform manage that? And lastly is the product maturity. Is the platform, does it produce a platform that's sustainable and robust? Can it adapt to the needs of the users over time? So all of those things are key considerations.
Thanks, Carol. And Angela, what challenges do organizations face when it comes to leveraging data, and how can they be overcome?
So, in my experience, organizations struggle with several different challenges when it comes to leveraging data for digital transformation. The first is that they've built up these data silos. And so, one of the most pressing challenges is just that their data is owned in, or it is collected in databases and systems that don't communicate with each other. And so this fragments the holistic view that organizations have created for their landscape. Another thing is that the quality of the data is just very poor usually. And so this hampers decision makers when they try to understand the data that's being presented to them. The data is inaccurate, it could be outdated, there's duplicate data, and all of this leads to misguided strategies and it just takes a long time to present that data and to make good, solid strategic decisions. So a solution to that is to implement a robust data governance policy and to use data cleansing tools and to promote data literacy with the employees to make sure that that data is as clean as it possibly can be. Another thing is just a general lack of skills. So as data technology evolves, it we're exposing a gap in the necessary skills to analyze and then draw those strategic insights to effectively manage the data. So we need continuous training. We also need to hire specialized talent to promote the narrowing of this gap. And it's also worthwhile just to invest in more user-friendly analytic tools and to empower our non-technical users with those analytic tools. So we also have then, of course, the privacy concerns. So with regulations like GDPR, there is this heightened scrutiny around data privacy. And so we need to make that security, data security and privacy
um, a higher priority. And so organizations need to maintain transparency about how data is collected and used so that they can be more in line with those regulations. They need to conduct the regular audits and make sure that they are following these compliance checks. So I think that another struggle is that there's going to be resistance to change. So employees are accustomed to these traditional methods and the way that things have always been. And when you begin to implement the types of changes that digital transformation involves, then you can expect a certain level of resistance. And so it's up to the organizations to present their change management strategies in a way that can make adoption more um, advantageous and just make it clear to the employees why this change is coming about and communicate, communicate, communicate. That's the best way to ensure that we mitigate this resistance and have better adoption. So I think that if we really want to harness the full power of digital transformation, it's going to be an ever evolving practice, and it really will help raise the level of data utilization, and the processes involved will really be something that employees overall will um, adapt to and see the benefits from once they understand how this transformation will benefit them.
Thank you, Angela. And Sarah, why is it essential for non technical stakeholders to speak the same language as IT teams?
It's amazing how the vernacular within the different functions can actually change how effective communication can occur between those two functions. I think when in IT, I think a simple thing that people in the business function can learn is just some of the basic terminology that people in IT use to understand what they're talking about. API, for example, it's basically how you get information from one system to another is through this thing called an API. And I think understanding the basic concept behind that is something that can help bridge the gap and break down some of those communication barriers. And then on the flip side, I think I've seen the best IT professionals in my career were those that immersed themselves in the business. And um, oddly enough, I thought the best way to do that, I mean, my background is a lot in the quality space, was to actually put the IT project manager through auditor training. And through that, they're understanding two things. One, a basic overview of business processes, because the ISO standard is the way to do business, and it's pretty standard no matter what industry you're in. But then also learning how to ask questions, because you're doing an audit and now you're have a skill set that's like kind of seeking to understand what the business is actually going through. And when those two teams can communicate effectively, you can get requirements right the first time. And what that's going to do is speed up your implementation time of any IT system.
Thank you, Sarah. And Carol, as organizations add new IoT technologies and software solutions, they're asking more from their teams. But how does an increased volume of data impact employees?
Yes, the increased volume of data can really come from increased data sources. So for example, on the factory floor or in smart buildings, we have cheaper and easier to install sensors, as well as a proliferation of SaaS companies offering their services. And what this can do is create data silos. And it definitely can make reporting and gaining insights more complex and time consuming. But in the end, with a good data platform or even a more customized data product, users can possibly and potentially discover things that they may not have discovered before.
Thank you, Carol. And Angela, how can organizations ensure they create actionable data that impacts their businesses?
Oh, of course. So in today's digital economy, data is everywhere, but turning it into actionable insights is what is going to set one organization apart from another. It's where their success is going to be. And so it's up to the organization then to set clear objectives and to start defining what it is they're really seeking to achieve. So I think that they need to set from the beginning that they want to, um, what it is exactly that their goals are. So, are they just gathering data for the sake of gathering data, or are they trying to seek to gather relevant data? So, are they focusing on data that aligns to some of their strategic organizational goals, or are they just capturing data that they hope will eventually be useful in some way? So I think they need to prioritize the relevancy of the data and look for the potential actionable insights from that. So, for example, are you looking for data that's related to customers and your products and the use of those products by your customers, or are you just making big spreadsheets? So the next thing is to implement robust analytical tools, because the the more investment that an organization makes in those um, analytical platforms is where they'll get the 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 best use of this data quickly and with the best output. So these tools usually are pretty intuitive. This allows the teams then to visualize that data for its patterns and trends and to identify any anomalies. And then that's where the real value comes from that underlying data. The next thing is just to prioritize the data's quality. So, like I was saying earlier, all of this data is out there, but you have to ensure that the data that you're using is clean, that it's consistent, and most of all that it's accurate. Because if it's not, it could lead you down the wrong path to where you could be making strategic decisions that are really not going to help your company. Another thing is to be able to engage in cross-functional teams, because it's the collaboration of the entire team that is going to bring you to holistic views. And sometimes it's the engagement of the team that brings the data to a more actionable plan. And you get that emerging perspective from sales to marketing to operations and into production and customer satisfaction. Whereas if you're just reviewing the sales numbers, that may not be as informative as you would get from an entire cross-functional team. And you do want to foster a culture that is data driven and where everyone understands how the investigation and analysis of the data leads to decision making and strategic decisions in particular, so that all the employees understand that their contributions lead to the end results of the company. And again, this analysis is iterative. And so every step leads forward. I would say also you want to ask for feedback and create feedback loops in your analysis. And you want to be able to share those insights that you are gaining broadly within your organization. Because just like with the cross-functional teams, you'll be getting a more holistic view of the data, and thus the strategic decisions that are being made will be more accurate and lead you to better results. So, in conclusion, just creating this actionable data is not just a one and done sort of thing. You're looking at vast amounts of data and within many parts of the organization. And as one team looks at the same data, they'll have a different view than, say, another organization. But you want to do this intelligently. You want to process and analyze this data with a clear strategy. You want to use the right tools, and you want to make a company-wide commitment to harness the value of this data to drive strategic business results.
Thank you, Angela. And Sarah, how can organizations successfully bridge the gap between the businesses and the technical teams?
I think that the first thing that I recommend businesses do is to put the project management function within the business. I think having that person who's responsible for either whether it's a full-blown digital transformation or it's implementing a digital product or it's doing some sort of connected device on the shop floor, I think having a person that reports through the operation or the business that they're supporting really becomes an effective way for that organization to bridge the gap between IT and the business. Once that person is resourced and identified, I think it's important for them to get training, technical training on what is being implemented and how is it being implemented. I've seen firsthand that when I've worked in the business side supporting IT, and by gaining a little bit of technical knowledge on what they're doing, we are able to implement systems right the first time with less rework, less headaches after go live, et cetera. And then I also think, like I had said before, anything you can do from the IT team to help them understand the business process more, I think that can be a real advantage as well. I've even seen where actual software developers, when they have an opportunity to have a face-to-face conversation or a digital face-to-face conversation with somebody that has to execute a step of the process, and they can understand what their workflow looks like on the regular, the solutions that I've seen produced are fantastic, and they're getting them right the first time. I've seen where you have a single product owner and everything funnels from the product owner over to the scrum team and the development happens behind the scenes. But I think there's real magic in getting people to talk to each other. And that may not be traditional, but it's from my experience, and I've seen it firsthand what the benefits could be in that model.
Thank you, Sarah. And Carol, when it comes to managing a data strategy, how can organizations bridge the gap between business and technology to make workdays better for employees?
Thanks, Tiffany. Yes, I could maybe say ditto to what Sarah just said, but I have a few things to add to that. I mean, there's things that can be done before, during, and after a project. And really, if they take the approach of a product-based strategy instead of a project-based strategy, that way it's not something that has a beginning and an end. And one of the first places to start is really to change from a tech mindset to a people mindset. And that can be done in the language. So instead of first sitting down and having that conversation, okay, which data platform are we going to use? Rather than, okay, here's the people that are going to use it. Where you're having problems now in your data reporting or analytics, and how can we help you now? So that's the first place to start. And then include the people in the planning and the customization. And that includes people using it every day, as well as the I team, the tech team, just as Sarah mentioned. And then after everything is done and the users are using it, include user surveys, have incremental adjustments, because over time it will need to change to continue to help make the users, the people's workday better. And in the end, the plan is to help them discover insights from the data that they're getting every day.
Thank you, Carol. And this next question goes out to all of you. You're all highly accomplished women in the technology sector. What advice would you give to women interested in pursuing a career in emerging technology or seeking to grow their careers? And we'll start out with Angela.
I would say that this is a field that is wide open to women. And if you are interested in a career in technology, um, go for it. Whether you want to pursue additional training, find a mentor, seek a connection with someone who's already in the field. Ask them, how did you get into this career? And what advice would you have to help me? Who could you introduce me to? Actually set out to interview other women who are already in the field and maybe even the exact position that you would like to have, and chart your path. Be intentional about how you want to grow your career. And I think you'll find that most women are very open to helping other women advance and get that training, make those introductions, and so forth. I know I am. And I would be very open to LinkedIn connections, introductions to the organizations that I participate in and serve in. And I think that that is one way or a few ways that you can advance your career and enter this area of technology.
Thank you, Angela. And next, Sarah. What advice would you give to women interested in pursuing a career in emerging technology or seeking to grow their career?
I think the first piece of advice I would have for young women pursuing careers in this space is to um, first start with curiosity. As somebody that's entry level or new into their career, maybe you've taken a pivot from a different career path altogether into this space. I think it's important in areas that are constantly changing and evolving to be curious and try to understand what's the new thing that's happening. Why are people doing things a specific way? And the second piece of advice I would have is really to lead with empathy. I think one of the biggest challenges in this space is you're changing things, and it's not in people's nature necessarily to want to embrace change, and it can be hard. You can run up against obstacles and absent people that don't want to do things differently. Unfortunately, maybe even there's circumstances where maybe there's sabotage. And so I think getting having empathy and really establishing a relationship with the people who are going to be the end users and the stakeholders and those that are involved in the end product right out of the gate, and I think can go a lot of way to going back to what I said earlier about trust and building trust. And I think that's a really critical element of change management. So if you're curious and you ask questions and you seek to understand and really let people know that you understand where they're coming from, I think you'll have a good chance of overcoming the hurdles of change management.
Thank you, Sarah. And Carol, what advice would you give to women interested in pursuing a career in emerging technology or seeking to grow their careers?
Thank you, Tiffany. One piece of advice I would have is really to have a mindset where you're not afraid of STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. You 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 need to have a mindset where you don't have to be a whiz, you don't have to be getting 90 plus marks to have an interest and curiosity about anything that's STEM. And there's a wide variety of careers that you can go into. You can go into accounting, marketing, business. You don't have to be involved in emerging tech. You don't have to be involved in discovering the tech, but there's still a ways that you can feel like you're a part of it. And just because you're not a high achiever in STEM courses or STEM in general doesn't mean that you have to give up on it.
Thank you, Carol. And I'm going to throw in one last bonus question. You've all done so fantastic that I would love to hear more. So, as a bonus question, starting with Angela, what advice would you give to someone struggling with digital transformation or embarking on their digital transformation journey?
My first tip is to ensure that the data that you have is clean and accurate, consistent, and archived or stored in a place that is accessible to the team that's going to be working on the digital transformation. You need to start with a clean house, is what I like to say. So that would be my first tip. And then the second tip is when you're embarking on a digital transformation and whatever area of the organization that is making this change, again, communicate, communicate, communicate. Make sure that you have identified all of the stakeholders. So who is going to be affected by this change? And ensure that they understand why the transformation is taking place, how they will be affected, and what they will need to do to um, to update their processes. So you want them to be engaged stakeholders, and you want to ensure that you have a method to measure adoption once the transformation is complete, because that's what you ultimately want. You want the new processes to be adopted, and people will only adopt the change if they believe in it.
Thank you, Angela. And that same question to you, Sarah. What advice would you give to someone struggling with digital transformation or just embarking on their digital transformation journey?
I think the first piece of advice I have is to get clear on why you're doing it, why it's important, what kind of outcome is it going to deliver. I think you're going to need to understand what that means because it'll help you shape your scope. It'll help you make trade-off decisions. And then also when it comes time to managing stakeholders, being able to explain why we're doing something for the, especially for those that you're interacting with that are resistant to change, you can always come back to that why and keep that North Star in the top of everybody's mind as you're going throughout your journey from the very beginning when you're scoping it and throughout its implementation.
Thank you, Sarah. And lastly, Carol, please tell us what advice would you give to someone embarking on digital transformation or struggling with digital transformation?
Again, I think Sarah answered it really well, but maybe I'll tackle the struggling portion. It's very possible that the people who are involved in the either the committee or the user groups that are involved in digital transformation have maybe lost the interest and passion, and maybe you might need to get back to the people that are driving it and see if you need to bring some more people on board who might have more of a driving force and passion for what you're trying to do.
Well, thank you all so much for joining me today. You all did a fantastic job. And thank you to everyone watching. We hope you enjoy the rest of the event. And thank you so much, ladies. You all did such a great job. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Carol. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.